the Mirembe Estate in Sentema. They thought about you and they gave you affordable housing. You can be an owner of a home for as little or as less or as minimum or as affordable as 50 million Uganda shillings. And with just a deposit of 10%, you can start your journey of being a homeowner. Vincent, it's a pleasure having you on set.
Thank you, Christabel. It's a pleasure always to be here with you.
How do you rate Uganda's real estate for the year 2022?
That's a good question. I would just split it into two, residential and, of course, commercial office space. I can assure you that from the office space, we have struggled a bit because of all these issues to do with, for example, the adoption to Zooms and all this technology we are talking about, which we didn't know before COVID. So we had the struggles to actually from 2020 to fill up the spaces that became vacant because of the pandemic. And you could see that it's trying to catch up. Before we could immediately do this and stabilize, there was the high cost of living, fuel cost, Ukraine, Russia issues.
And the fuel doesn't look like it's going down anytime soon. It just keeps, and we keep getting comfortable with the new rate. We keep getting comfortable.
Yeah, we're adopting, and I hope that actually, even when things settle, the fuel companies and whatever,
I don't think there is a possibility in that.
Us back, or
I don't think there's a possibility. The fact that they know 60% of Ugandans who own cars can still drive their cars with a liter of fuel about 5,000 something. Then definitely, why should they go lower?
I hope the regulator is watching them, and maybe then at one point that settles. But we're still struggling with that. Then before that is then Ebola comes in, and then of course now the international traffic
has been cut out.
So what do you mean by that? NGOs which we are hoping to expand, or different multinational organizations which we are trying
to come into the country to invest into the country.
Oh wait, this Ebola thing, let's wait to send our people in there. I happen to be a director at Habitat for Humanity as a board member. We lost an international delegation to come to our conference for the symposium, the housing symposium, because of Ebola. So that was cut out because of Ebola. So these things are real. Now, that was commercial space, and of course, rates went down a bit. If you were renting at $14 per square meter, it went to 12 because people were negotiating, we are restarting, our books are bad, and so the residential side, the opposite is that what we saw, there was stability. As you remember, in the beginning, we had issues of negotiating the payment terms because people were really cash flow deprived, but they could not leave the houses.
Of course.
Or if they left the houses, they were only going a bit lower, but they had to be somewhere.
Still, they had to be somewhere.
So there was stability there. So we also saw it peaking as COVID started subsidizing. But again, of course, the same effects of the cost of living
and
the Ebola, well, now you see it stagnant a bit. So what I can tell you is that in the residential, there was stability. In the commercial, there was a bit of emptiness. Starting to fill up again, was pushed a bit back. But at commercial, we are not 100%. In residential, we remained almost where we were. But we are hoping that actually, for example, nothing else happens.
I want to ask you, what do you envisage for 2023?
If nothing happens, because Ebola now seems to be, thanks to the government and all the players, seems to be controlled. If it happens and stays the same, we shall see business moving as usual. Because we must go on.
Of course, we must go on regardless. The economy has to move.
It has to move. We have to find solutions. People must go to school. But the problem is when you talk about Ebola and this COVID, they hit very serious sectors. For example, the education sector. Once you paralyze the education sector, you have touched agriculture.
So much.
Food. You have touched all the other consumable products, the peppers, the fuel, the transportation of the children, and so forth. It does a lot. So if we don't get such issues which hit the core some of the sectors in the economy,
we have also touched employment. How many teachers are out there renting homes? So if they're not actually being employed, then they're also having issues to be able to maintain their
casual
lifestyle.
Workers. Each school on average, you find it having about 100 people working.
Thank you.
Now you cut them off those houses, which houses those people are empty, or they are struggling to pay. Then the suppliers to those schools.
Yes, true.
They have offices, they have this, they have that, and so forth. Those are making uniforms, those who are making it. It's a huge. So I think that has been the problem for us. I mean, shelter is shelter.
What are the biggest challenges that the sector is facing?
Again, it's still the undersupply in terms of, I would call it just us knowing.
We have decided to give a blind eye to the inflation levels in Uganda. We have decided to think, it is normal. A loaf of bread that we used to buy at 1,500, 1,800, 2,000. Right now, you're buying a loaf of bread at 6,000. You're buying a kilo of flour at almost 4,000.
Yeah. And that's why I'm hoping that actually the regulators keep an eye on the fuel prices.
But are they?
This is fuel.
We have gone almost a whole year. Are they keeping an eye?
Yes, the moment the fuel cost goes high.
Of course, everything has to go high, yes.
The inflation goes in.
Yes.
Whoever is looking at the fuel must be very, very careful for us to go back to where we were. Otherwise, it's going to be biting and biting. But the beauty is, as you said, is that we try to adjust. We must live. People, you remember, in the first 2-3 weeks, people packed cars.
But Mr. Vincent, you say we must live, we must adjust.
Yeah.
But how do you live when you have a sack of cement at 40,000?
Yes,
and yet you have to construct.
Yeah,
and yet now look at the developers. I feel sorry for the developers who had already had people buy off plan, and previously last year, but one is sack was 32, 34, and you're selling a house, let's say, at 50 million, giving an example, 50 million. And now your cost of production, your cost of quantity is times 2, the original cost of quantities. And you can't come back and tell this person who had already made a down payment that, see, prices are high, we are increasing your price. So
the dream of affordable housing is being postponed.
Exactly. It's not yet, it's not going to become a reality.
It's being postponed.
So for people like, Mirembe Villas, Goji Group that was trying to make it a reality in Uganda, is now being inconvenienced. They actually can't make it a reality anymore.
That is why I'm suggesting that the one who is looking at the fuel must help us very quickly. Number 2, the issue of the fuel, the oil extraction. Those people who are involved in the oil business must now realize that actually we need oil yesterday. That's self-sustainability. And we're talking about oil, we want to go away to renewable energies because of the environment. Yes. But now for Uganda, you really have to balance. There is the issue of saying oil is not a clean energy, but it is that what we have today. And have we also extracted it to the levels that actually other countries have done so? So we need that oil. Oil creates magic. We need renewable energy because energy makes magic. We need electric cars. We need all these things.
But see, I like that you're saying we need all these things. But what about where we get our fuel from, Kenya and oil, where we, try to transport our oil from? Are there ways we can mitigate for this to be, lower? Is there something we can do in exchange for them at least to lower costs and transportation? The government should look at it. The indicators should be put there that these things are handled. But so where are we going, Vincent? Because this is just not affecting, the cars. But it's affecting the whole chain and right up to real estate.
I think that's what we are saying, that the one who is managing and looking at the fuel in terms of the public interest, that's where the magic is. Are we willing to sacrifice the other businesses that run around the fuel for leaving it as how it is, or we are going to do an intervention to ensure that actually it does not affect as much as possible as how it is doing? Because fuel is fuel. The real estate sector, let me talk from a real estate point of which we know.
Yes,
the point is when you're building houses, from the manufacturing side, I can assure you, from making the tiles, making the bulbs, making the everything is manufactured in a factory. And that factory must run on the grid, which is power. And that power must be run by turbines, which are somewhere being run by some generators. And if someone does not look at the final product and go backwards to the original, to the process that leads to the final product, you are likely to just be comfortable and think fuel, the whole economy. Then we'll know that actually the fuel prices need to be stopped yesterday.
Exactly.
And either subsidies or negotiating with where the oil is coming from to ensure that actually as a country we are cushioned.
We are a bit, in a center of comfort to know that we are mitigating and handling the fuel prices.
Exactly. So if we don't do that, or I think people are doing that, maybe we don't know, but if the faster we do it, the better.
Would be seeing it reflect if it was being done. Maybe the process is ongoing, but it hasn't yet been actually implicated for us to see it.
Exactly. So the question is, how do you inform the public, public awareness about what's happening? How do you communicate to the public in terms of what is being done? And that actually keeps the hope alive.
So Vincent, in conclusion, what are entities like AVATS doing to help see that, our real estate market is getting back to something with, like we said, with the COVID? What is AVATS doing?
No, like for us, we do the real estate management. We manage buildings on behalf of tenants, of landlords, and so forth. So what we have done, for example, today, the other day I was talking about with people who actually have solar systems to put on the buildings. What they do is that they try to create a solar system that actually speaks with the umeme. And by integrating the two, you lower the cost of the unit of the power. We are going into that kind of area.
That's good.
We are talking about now our landlords. We want to discuss with them and say, look, how do we utilize these roofs? Because some of these roofs, water is just coming from it and just running away. How do we harvest it to ensure that actually the tenants in those buildings
have a less cost on water bills?
Yes, so every building we manage, can we also store water? So if these tenants want actually to use water for washing cleaning their houses and so forth, they don't use national water, they cut down the cost.
So at the end of the day, you who thinks you're saving by paying rent of 500, at the end of the day, you're paying 1.5. How affordable is that?
Exactly. And that's what as Havertz Housing Limited now we are looking at. The tenants who are in our buildings, how do we slash off a few of those things so that actually the cost
of living comes down?
Yes, that's what we can only do within our means.
Listen, it's a pleasure having you on set. Whenever I have you on set, we could actually talk and talk. At times, I feel like the 30 minutes we have for the show is not enough when I host you. But it was a pleasure having you on set.
That's the magic of us making sure that the people out there are informed, they get the right information and keep the property show as their priority program at 7:30 every Sunday evening and Saturday as a replay.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you,
Christabel.
Thank you.